anger was a big thing. That was his primary emotion. That was what I felt when I was younger. And that was a part of the story as well. It was the rejection of the things that I saw from him that I didn't want to become. And it's interesting how it works, because the more you reject certain things about your father, the more you become them.
Yeah.
You will become this person.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Going Out Looking In, the podcast where we're exploring the human experience through conscious conversations. My name is Maxi, I'm your host, and today I'm bringing you an episode of authenticity, connection, and reflection. That is because I'm speaking with podcaster, men's worker, facilitator, and fellow seeker on the path of self-discovery, Chris Geisler. I stumbled across Chris's work through numerous angles and avenues and opportunities and channels on social media, especially because he had many people on his podcast that I had on my podcast, or he's speaking about very similar topics. And so the energetic footprint basically of Chris was all over my feed. And it was therefore just a matter of time until I had to reach out, and I was like, hey, let's sit down. How do you feel about that, Chris? And thankfully he said yes, and here we are. And it led to a beautiful co-creation of actually 2 episodes that we did together, 2 conversations in 2 different sittings. And there were some technical difficulties, and there were just like some stuff that we both, felt into. And this is also what I've learned when I'm speaking about authenticity. Just to have a good, authentic conversation is not that easy. What does it take to do that? What kind of room does that take to facilitate an environment where a conversation like that can take place? And obviously that's very relevant for both him and I as podcasters who have, we're trying to have meaningful conversations once, twice per week, and share that with the world. So that connected us on a very deep level. And we also moved then to connection and reflection. And that led us eventually down the path of reflecting on the relationships that we have and the responsibilities we have towards our parents. And that was beautiful. That was a beautiful bit in a conversation because, I feel like discernment, setting boundaries, standing up for oneself, finding your own values outside of projections, and also your lineage and your ancestry, and what kind of projections your parents, for example, or your family for that matter, biological family, nucleus family, is projecting on you. What do they expect from you? And how do we navigate that balance? How do we find that balance between honoring them, being grateful for them, everything that they've done for us, because without them we wouldn't be here, but then also, how can we, come back to who we are? And yeah, so that's just naturally where the conversation went, and I thought it was very beautiful, and I've learned certainly a lot. I'm really inspired by Chris's devotion for truth. He's like a very sincere investigator of the human experience, which reflects itself in his work. And therefore this conversation. And so we're doing very similar things in the world, but yet, we both have our own unique flavor, and I really enjoyed that co-creation between us. And I'm grateful for Chris and his patience with me this episode. And again, just very, very grateful to do this. So without further ado, I bring you this. I am certain you're going to take away a lot from it. what does it mean? Yeah, to have a good and authentic conversation, to be honest with yourself and others, and to return to, your integrity, your standpoint in life. Much more, what does it mean to run a podcast? What does that take? So much beautiful stuff in there. So without further ado, I'll bring you this episode with myself and Chris Geisler. So yeah, just want to make sure that we bring our awareness to the space and tune into the body, beautiful vessel of the divine, where we are incarnated for this visit this time around. Just getting really acquainted with what's alive, with what's present. Feel into it. Feel the heart. Want to feel the heart as well. Feel the feet on the ground. This is what it feels like to be human, with everything there is and the thoughts constantly entering and disappearing. And with that, we open this portal and to call in for the support through a little prayer. Beautiful creation on this day. Please facilitate a loving connection between Chris and myself. Guide our tongues so we can speak what needs to be said. We can hear what needs to be heard. That we share with an open heart, with honesty, integrity, authenticity, respect and love for each other, but moreover for ourselves. We are infinitely grateful for all the gifts we receive every day, that we move in abundance, in and outside. We are conscious of the nectar of life that we were gifted with. And we realize that the ancestors, those who've come before us and those who will come after us, are here with us right now. And so we honor that as well. With that, we thank you, we thank you, we thank you. Moving into this conversation with grace. And yeah, slowly returning back to this moment here. Always love the moment of opening up the eyes and taking in the world as I do when I'm not as aware. I'm opening up the eyes slowly and then the light enters the consciousness. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? It enters the awareness, the field of awareness, and it's just like, wow. Reminds me of those videos of those 10-day darkness retreats. Have you seen them online?
I have, yeah.
When they take off the blindfold and they're
Yeah, I was just
just,
talking about that the other day with my friend because he's booking to go. Hmm.
oh wow. So
I feel like there might be
yeah,
expectation there, though, that everyone has to cry because so many people do. Do you know what I mean? I think I'll
yeah,
be sat in the chair thinking, "Am I going to cry? Am I going to cry?" You know?
yeah. But I found the reactions to be very diverse. Like it's going. I feel like some people are
Yeah.
really quick on like being able to integrate what just happened and to be able to go into the expression of that, whereas some, and that is to me it seems very intuitive, it's
Hmm.
overwhelming, it's completely overwhelming, and to then like wake up into reality. What is reality? Yeah, waking up into this matrix again,
Sure.
with having a camera pointed at you first thing. I don't know how that
Yeah.
would
I
make me
think they're
feel.
missing a trick, though. I want to see the first time they go into a supermarket. That's what I want to see on video. I want to see the first time they got on a bus. I want to see because if anyone's had like these deep experiences, and I relate to like a 10-day Vipassana where you don't speak for 10 days, and like the first time I heard music, it just my heart just exploded. You know, it's just like symphony of poetry and beauty and so much stimulation coupled with something you've been deprived of, and it's just full of gratitude, but also like a stimulation that I've never felt before. So, like after a darkness retreat, which I will do. It's funny we're talking about it. There's a place in France, in Lille, which my friend is looking at, which is one of the closest to home, I think. But they, not Lille, Leon, actually. Um, but yeah, it's it's like you get to choose how many days you spend in complete darkness. How does one choose how many days? I don't want to, like, I don't want that responsibility. Like, well, 3 days, 4 days. Like, we have no, like, do you know what I mean? We have no, like, reference to know how much 3, 4 days is a week. Like, what's the difference? I just, obviously, the longer it goes on, the harder it will be. But fascinating that we have to do this, right? To reconnect. I always lean into like the things that we're doing now. However, darkness has been one of the primary, probably ancient medicines, you know, to really
Mm.
deprive yourself of a sense. And I think it would be one of the oldest forms of medicine and going inward. And yeah, that cave that you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. So darkness would be something that we've feared for so many years because as we evolved, it was something that got us killed. It would have got us into trouble,
Mm.
and you would fear the night. Um, you'd have to survive through the night, you know, especially if you're traveling distant lands. So yeah, like I imagine it was of really going into that fear and depriving yourself of anything. Have you ever done a sensory deprivation tank?
Yeah, I was already thinking about it. Like I was living in a Zen Buddhist monastery, so I was definitely deprived of desire, sexual desire, and like it's a full circle moment. I was literally talking about that yesterday, about exactly that, about being in the monastery and not engaging in any intimate connections, neither with other people nor myself, and intimate
Yeah, no
in terms of
masturbating.
sexual. Yeah, exactly.
Tough
So,
one.
uh, so, and then the person I was speaking with was like, "Wow, that must be so hard, especially for a prolonged period of time. You know, like 3 months or." And I'm like, wasn't hard at all. Like
Yeah.
my awareness was just placed elsewhere. I was just completely in a different state of mind and heart and soul. And so I didn't even, yeah, I didn't miss it. I didn't miss it. It actually, now that I'm speaking about it, it's a cathartic, like, realization afterwards. Like for me, entering, like leaving the monastery was one of the most powerful, most transformative experiences. Like literally like the hour, or like the 2 hours after leaving, driving back into civilization, because it's also like a very remote place in the Black Forest in Germany. So that was intense, like you were just describing. And I wasn't deprived of a sense in the way in which, for example, the darkness retreat would go about it. I was just, yeah, just intensely meditating. Yes, okay, yeah, 6-7 hours a day, and remaining in what they refer to as the Zen state, right? So even if you are not in meditation, you are in meditation while doing the dishes, while cleaning, while cooking, while
Yeah.
doing anything. You know, the inner posture, that's what they call it. The inner posture is Zen. So entering the world again after that was, yeah, was overwhelming, and made me see a lot of the things from a fundamentally different viewpoint. Fundamentally different. I was overwhelmed by the pace of the world. I was overwhelmed by the energies of the world, yeah. And how much I need to absorb every single day just by moving through this labyrinth of energies. It's
Yeah.
intense. So
Well, you
I
have
don't
to
know
numb.
how.
You
Yeah,
have to
do
numb
you?
parts of you. If you've ever lived in a big city, you'll know you have to survive, to get through the day. There's too much going on. If you were to tune into the sadness, the grief, the struggle, the stress, but also the beauty and the stimulus and the different culture and the colors, and there's a whole gamut of experience in these rich environments. I'd say more the former of stress and sadness, to be honest. If you feel into that, I think that's a heavy emotion to hold. And a homeless man gets on a train, starts giving his pitch, and you'll notice everyone tunes out. They have to, because they experience that every single day, or maybe every single train ride. And what do you do? It's so overwhelming to think about. Of course, you want to help this person, but is even reaching out, speaking to them, going to help? It might not have last time, etc. It's like a big deal to go through in this modern time. Like even that, so far removed from what we're used to. So much has changed in such a short period of time. I always tune into, like, if the entire human evolution was a book, 300-page book, the last page would be about civilization, the last sentence would be like technology, and the last word would be like, yeah, the internet. And how much that's changed things. It's just not what we're wired for and not how we've evolved. So the ultimate question has always been for me is, if you're not aware, you will suffer greatly. I think that's the biggest question of our time. It's like, how aware are you of how much things impact you, and how can you, hack your environment and your lifestyle to be well, live well.
Yeah, can you just share a little bit more about where you are at with that? I know you're talking to countless people on the podcast about it, and we've spoken about it last time, that this is something that you want to move more into, holistic living, whatever tags you want to give that sentiment, but I would be super curious. I'm interested in that myself very much. So, yeah.
Yeah, simple little framework, knowing, doing, being, that always helps me. Because we might know something, but then do we start to do it? And then the last step would be just to be it, to embody it. Or you could put that into, say, your phone is going to be harmful for you if you use it a lot. And just from a physical standpoint, like your sight, we stare at a screen all day, our sight's going to, what's the word? Atrophy. So from that point of view, literally, you're then like, okay, you know this, but then do you start to like do things that are going to be different? You start to put the phone down every 45 minutes and like, or the computer. And then after some time, then you start to become the thing that you're aware of. So there's that lovely little thing that I was lean into, because knowing doesn't mean you're practicing it. Information rich, experience poor in modern times. So where I'm at, I am traveling around the world in a van, sharing that story a little bit more every day, leaning into that edge of embodying what it all is I'm doing, and like merging that with how I'm being seen. This year I actually turned this camera around. It used to be the other way, and it used to be against the curtain, so no one knew where I was. And it was like an extension of me. Like, how much do I want to be seen in this situation? How do I want to invite people in to view my backdrop? And like, having an online presence is never gonna, it's never going to portray exactly what you experience, but there are elements to that. And it's a big analogy for like how we portray ourselves, maybe in person. How much do we share, and how much do we let people into our own worlds? And it could be in the internal, right? How much do I let people into my heart? So it's as within, so without. So I turn the camera around as a bit of a statement of like, I want to let people into my life, which is a van, which is me traveling around, bringing also people physically into the van, and interviewing people. And why not? Like, I never wanted that to define me, or for people to connect to just the van. I wanted them to connect to me first, or the conversations first. Chris Williamson has just put out this kind of groundbreaking podcast. He's shot 4 in this.
Yep.
Never done before.
Yep.
Like, big, incredible. Like, what he spent, like, I don't know, 30 grand on a production of his podcast. And as a part of me is like, is that taking away from just this richness of the conversation and this human connection that we're all striving for, and this truth and knowledge as well? Like, we want to hear the goods. But is that taking it away? And I battle with that. And I've battled with it with me, of like just wanting the conversation to do the talking, literally, and not like try and sell my story as like, as some kind of a way in for that. But I don't know. I think there's room for both, right? There's room for people to connect with me and the mission that I'm on, driving around, interviewing people, because to do what 99% of people don't have, you got to do what 99% of people won't do. And
Yes.
a lot of people won't live in a van. They're not going to give up their possessions, go put them in with mum and dad. What does that symbolize to me? How do I feel about that? And drive around. I mean, I made a decision to come to Ibiza for 3 months, which I didn't necessarily need, but if you've done a winter in a van, it's, yeah, that's the testing times in England. So I did a winter last year, and this year I wanted to get away into some warmer climates. But I'm coming back next week, and yeah, I continue the mission of prioritizing what sets me alive, what brings me alive, what connects me to the life that I'm living. podcasting's been a phenomenal way in to experience life a bit more richer, you know. So yeah, that's a big one that I'm continuing to prioritize at the moment. And you know, I must have spent, I don't know, double figures, thousands of pounds on the podcast, just because I believe in it so much, you know, and I want to provide like good quality and yeah, really like make a stand for like what it is I'm doing. Like that's my investment. That's to show the world how much I care about this platform, about this way of recording conversations and then moving people like emotionally and interconnecting people and allowing people to remember. You'll hear a lot of the word around remembrance lately, and maybe not, but for me it's very commonly used, and it's beautiful because no one can really teach you anything. You know, it's not about learning how to be healthy, but it's about remembering what you already have, what you've already know really within, which is your innate connection to the planet, to the earth that you walk, that sustains you, that you're from here, you're from this place, and it's a remembrance of connection to that and reminding people, and of course we're creating content right now, right? We are bringing people out of their moment, and I think we discussed that maybe last time, but there's so many incredible conversations being happening in the world, and being recorded in podcasts are like gaining momentum, and they're doing wonders for people. I remember speaking to you, like, I really think podcasts have changed culture to a degree that we cannot measure. Like they've really influenced the way people think and feel and how we can spread information, and so quickly.
What do you mean? What do you exactly mean by that?
So it's free. Anyone can get access to this conversation. You know, you go to the poorest lands in this world, and everyone's got smartphones. Everyone has access to this internet. So with that comes so much power, and also it moves us quicker. It's why the men's workspace has, you know, gained so much momentum, because we've been able to share it largely and consume what's being shared for free. So that allows more people to witness what's being done in different places. And the same with podcasts. You might have a podcast talking about climate change, ecological disaster, and everyone can connect to it and then feel like, oh God, yeah, like plastic, yeah, it's a real big problem. Let's talk about it a little bit more. How can I be part of that conversation? And really like tune into these key themes that we all connect to. But there's a big thing that David Attenborough talks about, now we're on this kind of nature connection, is that and this is the nature of podcast, tangents are welcome, right? David Attenborough says that how do you get people to care about their environment? You know, they're not going to care about something that they don't know why they need to care. It's like they need to know why. They need to fall in love with it. And how do you do that? You tell stories, and you know, bring people into the reason why they are connected to it, you know.
Yeah. There's, oh man, so many threads I want to pick up on with what you were just sharing. The whole thing, podcasting, start there. I thought the same thing with Chris Williamson. Thought the same thing. I saw the post and one part of me was just like pure excitement and pure amazement. I was just like, holy shit, that looks amazing. And then immediately I just put myself in the shoes of not only him, but moreover the guest. I don't know, like, especially people who, you know, might not be as accustomed to something that overwhelming in a scenery where you, I don't know, are put in a chair and are supposed to deliver some meaningful words to an audience that is
You're like competing
like
with
really
this like
big.
forever changing backdrop that's sending you in different places through different time zones, through different universes. And I'm like that's like changing as they were speaking. And I don't know, man.
Absolutely. And so, but then also as the responsibility for him as a host goes to, just like bring it back again and, you know, and incorporate, I guess, you know, incorporate the environment that you're in into the conversation, rather than it just being something that looks nice. So I don't know where he takes it. I am excited to actually watch some of those episodes. And what you've shared with me last time about your experience with him, that you don't feel his heart, is something that I cannot turn off anymore. Now I'm just seeing him through this lens. I'm just like, yeah, man, I just don't really see his and feel his heart. That's actually really true. You just voiced something that was already inside of me. So
Yeah, I
that's
think with
exciting.
my heart in his head, we could change the world. That's what I'm going to say when I meet him. And I'll be like, we join forces with my heart and your head. Let's do it. But
I
man,
love that. I love that.
It's interesting. I definitely feel like, I'm now going to be bold and just say, definitely, and I think he'll admit, like he'll be on the spectrum of some sort that is really meticulous, very good at his job, knows a vision, and can go for something. And good God, we need people like that. And he's put it into this, and that's how he can dissect and be so present in a bit of information and really deliver it in such a clean way. But with that consequence, superpower, but also kryptonite might be, it's like, oh, can I just slow the cadence down and be like, how do I feel about this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually wanted to share with you, as we've spoken about it last time, here, Rick Rubin again. I listened to in my opinion, my little bubble, to the best interview that he ever gave. And I just feel like this inspiration entering my orbit and how it transforms, not only this work, but like it informs the way that I am in any relationship. It's amazing. Like Richard Rudd, founder of Gene Keys, you know him? Yeah. So he was on the podcast with him, with Rick Rubin, and 3.5 hours again. But just how he's holding that space, it's a masterclass for me. And it contains like a bit of like an hour where they are like, they're drinking tea and they are like on air, and he'll just have him share about tea. And that's the thing, like, I think we are so used to consuming information that we set out to consume. So I'm typing in a search bar exactly what I'm looking for, which is a conversation about the manifestation of shamanic wisdom of the Inca tribe between this and that age, and I want to have that narrated by someone in English, no longer than 30 minutes, and I want to have it on Spotify now. So
that's
there's
exactly
like
what's happening.
And through that conversation and through those conversations in general, with Rick Rubin, I get exposed to so many aspects of life, of whatever, that I normally would not have chosen, and I find them so enriching, and they expand my consciousness to so many different frequencies. And I feel like this is like what naturally happened back in the day. For example, with radio, you were just tuning into a station, and then they were, I don't know, they potentially were interviewing someone, then there was some music, then there was like the host talking a little bit. So it wasn't curated by your preference. And I feel like there's immense value to be gained in that. Again, I guess like, you know, it goes both ways. So curating it for yourself, and you really sort of like going deep into something that interests you, but then at the same time being exposed to something that is not in your hands, and trusting in that. Like, I trust Rick Rubin, I trust his judgment, I trust in the guest that he's choosing, and so I do with you, for example. And that's why I also, while you were sharing, I also wanted to take a moment to express that. Man, I was just like, you were sharing, and I was just like in such a bliss right now. I was just like, oh, what did I manifest here? Just like, I'm just sitting here and I'm having a conversation with someone I'm resonating so deeply with, and I see myself in so many aspects of you, how you live your life. Yet we are so different, but like I can feel you so deeply. And do you know, like this feeling of like this like spontaneous, I don't know, opening of the heart? That's what I felt. I was just like, it's just so nice. And then I went back into, okay, now I'm thinking about what I'm going to say. But for a moment, there was just like this pure opening, and I was just like happy to be here. And this is all, yeah, I guess, you know, bringing it back to podcasting. Yeah, this is what this all is doing for me. I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm learning so much about myself. I'm learning about a topic, I'm learning about people. And then it's about like, okay, integrating that into everyday life. I don't know, I'm entering the kitchen with my roommates, and I find myself to be a better space holder for them just because of the podcast.
Oh, change your life.
How do I ask questions? You know, how do I ask questions? Yeah.
People have said that tenfold, like how even some things that I do that people like celebrate. They'll be like, oh, yeah, that's because of the podcast. And I'm like, still me. Like, it's like, you can celebrate me. It's not that celebrate the podcast. That's me, you know. I've done that. But it is that. It's people notice the way I can listen, the way I can ask a question and let it land and not have to save the person from the answer, because I'm afraid of them feeling uncomfortable. You know, there's so many elements to it. And what are we doing really? We're just having a conversation. That's all it is. That's all the podcast is. But with an intention, with a prayer, and also an emphasis on how can we make this the best conversation possible. If we did that in all aspects of our life, how rich would we live? How rich would we be? How amazing would our connections be? How beautiful would our relationships be? If we focused on those moments rather than wanting something different or looking at, you know, having better friends, or if we just nourish those connections and nourish the, you know, watered the conversations that we're having, and just even that question, it's so beautiful. Just saying, how can this really be a success for you? Like this time that we share, and we're going out for lunch tomorrow. Like how can it really, you know, what would make it a really good lunch for you? Just that. See the power in that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just having a conversation, like I'm finding out as I'm doing this, there is layers to that, and it's not easy actually, because I can get so much in my own way of just having a conversation, because I'm getting so self-aware, and I'm getting so stuck in trying to have a good conversation without actually having a good conversation.
Sure.
So yeah, it's
Yeah,
like,
it's like
so
trying
I
to be
guess like,
happy, right? Try and be happy. You won't be. Happiness is like an erection. The more you think about it, the more it goes away. It's like trying to be
yeah,
present. You're just in your head.
I want to I want to ask you, like, speaking about like the challenge of having just a good conversation. Now that you've done 100 plus episodes, like what? And I felt like in the last conversation that we had, in the previous conversation we had, you were very confident about like also encouraging me, like, it gets better, bro. It gets better. Like you get into the groove. And I pondered on that. I was like, okay, I want to, like, now that I get the chance of speaking to you again, like, I want to ask you, like, what makes you so confident, and what has been your experience with that, having just a good conversation? Like, how do you do it, and what's your what's your process like with that?
So generally, when I answer a question like that, I think about my relationship to the thing, because my relationship to the podcast really defines how I interact with it. And you can relate that to anything. Like the way you relate to something impacts the thing you're relating to. Have you heard the quote, when you change the way you look at something, the thing you look at changes. So I always think about, how do I relate to this? And if the story about the podcast is that I'm going to just do it for as long as I live, then that relieves a lot of pressure from me. Because if I've got like 10 episodes, then I'm going to like, oh God, I need to like make them the best I can make them. But like just saying to myself, I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life, that relieves a lot of pressure. It relieves a lot of, it relieves a lot of pressure around it. So there's that. I'm not in a rush. Just surrendering to the outcome is always beneficial, because as with the creative process, which is, you can associate that to anything, it's not really about the end result. It's about how can I just enjoy the podcast. I always say, when people ask me, is it going well? People say, oh, is the podcast, is it a success? I'm like, well, how do you define success? If the definition of success is that I am more connected to it and I'm enjoying it more than ever, then yes, it's successful. Like I'm enjoying it and I love the conversations. Sure, you'll go through phases and some are better than others, but ultimately I'm just navigating it in such a way that I see it as an extension of me. So I'm learning way more about myself through this than anything else. Like how much I know,
Same.
like showing up to that. Like you're not going to know anything until you start to teach it. And then just pushing those edges of like, how much do I know about a subject? How much can I also admit? And how much can I be honest about that I don't know? So don't ask me about unconditional love, because I don't know.
Well, good to know now, because we've spoken about it for 30 minutes in the last recording. So
We were like, yeah, so funny. But yeah, like in terms of the podcast, man, yeah, it is a process though. Like I change, it changes, everything does, but am I doing that in a more conscious way? It's testing, and especially as the landscape of how everyone consumes content, how people listen, how much video is prioritized now, and how small and more reduced everyone's attention is. Like those are factors, and I feel that to be the wise man in the room, you have to pay attention to what's needed, and what's out there, like always looking for feedback, always asking for feedback, like what's working, what's not, because you'll just kid yourself. And we are our own, like we have such a bias, and that might be biased to think I'm incredible or biased to think like I'm not. And there's a spectrum of that, and everyone fits on some part of it, but it's really important to get feedback. I'm not as bad as I think I am, because this is really landing for people. I'm not as great as I think I am, because it's not landing for a lot of people, And I never used to pay attention to the numbers until this year, really. And I was like, no, it's important to, like, if I'm going to dedicate so much time to something, I want to know if it's helpful. So not letting that define the conversations. I'm not going to get led astray with what's popular. I'm not going to start talking about P. Diddy and like current affairs. I'm going to tune into what I feel is needed and what I connect to the most. And just surrendering to like there's so much opportunity, right, in all we do. And that's the biggest thing. It's also decision making, like making a decision and just being consistent with it. It might not feel right after a few months, but just keep going. Like I tend to make decisions in like 6 month stints. So it's like, this is what I'm going to be doing for the next 6 months. And then in 6 months, I will make a decision whether I change or not. Because it's definitely been a pattern for me to just change direction. And within that becomes like security, because then I don't have to like be seen failing at something if something's not working. So I just pivot direction and change what I'm doing, so I don't have to kind of like witness the outcome of like just doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. Because I think that's naive, and that's not a formula for success, right?
What's your process like in preparing for the interviews?
Yeah, it changes. Online is very different to in person. Like how many in-person conversations have you done?
15, 10,
Yeah,
15, something like that.
so like that's great. So like half.
Well, no, I have like 50 something episodes out, 55.
Okay.
So, yeah, around, quarter maybe, have been in person.
I think it's just tuning back into like what brings me into alignment. So, the early waking up early, getting enough sleep, getting my nutrition dialed in, like moving my body, like really making sure I move, and clearing my head before, whether that's sitting still or really just witnessing. Like, how do you become more present? For me, and the ultimate answer is just to be aware of what you're sensing in that moment. So what you're hearing, what you're listening to, like just become more aware of that and just really be in the moment. Because when the thoughts come in about what you're doing next week, that's not in your senses. What are you feeling? What are you smelling? Like those sorts of things, like just different practices to really bring me into the moment, which just ultimately makes you feel good. It makes you feel connected. So that, my lifestyle generally is pretty healthy. What I determine is, all the pillars, like trying to dial them in as much as I can. So, yeah, we can talk about that if you want. But for the podcast, it's just making sure I've also done my homework, knowing what I want to say more. Like that is something that's coming in. I didn't used to do that, and it does depend on the guest. Some guests I will really learn about them. I'll read their book. I'll spend half a day or more learning about what they've been up to and how they've been holding their conversations recently and things like that. So that's important. But
yeah, I found super much resonate with that. And I don't know, for me it changed so much it keeps changing. Like I started off highly intuitive, no questions. And now I'm getting way more structured. Like I have so much stuff prepared. And sometimes I don't even use half of it or any of it sometimes even.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes I use every single question. Like I feel like I found it super valuable for me to prepare. Also like really like granularly, like really fine tuning what it is that I want from this conversation, like the intention behind it. What do I want to know about this particular person? And often it comes from an intuition that I connect with this individual. Like I'll look at them and I'll have like a first intuition about what they might have to offer. And then I feel like then questions are arising that enable me to extract that out of the person I'm speaking with, to varying degrees of success. Yeah, to varying degrees of success. Like I sometimes I'm also like looking back and I'm like, yeah, I had this intention, but yeah, I was lacking the tools of like extracting that. And sometimes it's naturally just like going straight to where I felt like I wanted to go. I don't know. You resonate with that? Like, is that?
Yeah,
Can
yeah,
you
man.
relate?
Often, and I know you do this, you look back on the conversations, you know, whatever your craft is, whether you are a movement coach, whatever it might be, putting a camera and recording yourself, doing whatever it is, whatever your craft is, and re-watching yourself can be so beneficial.
Yes.
Like this, I feel like there's so much room for that. Like really just hone in on what it is you're doing. Listening to myself has been an incredible and therapeutic practice over and over again of just reciting things and getting better and just noticing. Like if anyone wants to get better at public speaking, of course, a huge practice is going to be rewatch yourself. Notice when you're out of presence. Notice when you're saying things that are just noises, ums and ahs and whatever it might be. So listening to myself over and over again has been incredible. There's also loads of self-acceptance in there. Like I'm really just practicing, learning, and viewing through that lens. It's been amazing. Like of course there was a bit of judgment and there was a bit of imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome's a weird modern day invention, I feel. It never existed before. We could talk about that. So there's this amazing thing I saw about that. But yeah, I'm gonna respect the space and not go off and doing tangents. But yeah, it is that for me. Just rewatching myself and just knowing when I'm not present, and I'll rewatch conversations and be like, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with what they're saying, but I'm witnessing myself agreeing in the moment. So I'm like, so what's going on there? What's happening in that moment? Am I just holding this space? Do I want to play nice? Do I want to just get along to keep going? Like, do I want to make them feel comfortable? Because my intention is to have challenging conversations. It's not to, just extract all the facts and have no part to play in it. Like, I want to have challenging conversations. And noticing when I'm agreeing to things is a big one lately, because I want to bring people into like their truth and challenge that. So yeah, it's not something I've definitely been wanting to do a bit more, and like really trying to understand where I do that, like why I do that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, I resonate, and I ask myself as well, if that is within me, Yeah, if that's really something that I want and I can, am I capable of doing this? Is this a frequency I want to invite into the space?
Feel free to challenge me, bro.
Exactly. Are you ready? No, like this is like, yeah, sometimes I feel like, am I too naive? Am I too, but this starts way earlier, not in the conversation, because it starts with the selection of my guests, because the guests that I'm selecting, I'm usually in high resonance with. So that makes for a conversation that is based on a mutual amount and a
Sure.
similar amount of love and respect for each other. So there's not too much of like potential for disagreement, as at least like in terms of like my opinion about, like, because I know fundamentally where my guests are standing with the topics that I want to speak to them about. And I guess so it would start a little bit earlier in already like contemplating who I want to have on, and then yeah, go a little bit more to an edge with that. Like, I don't know. So I can just imagine like relationships, that my take on relationships change fundamentally. I do believe in a sacred union and in more like monogamous sort of relationships. So maybe I should have someone on who challenges that, and who from a point of experience can speak on free love and freer forms of love, that might expand my horizon. But then
Mm.
it would put me in a completely different situation, it would put me in a situation of not nodding along with everything, because I find myself doing that a lot. I'm like, yeah, 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 exactly. Share the medicine. Come on. But that's tainted by the glass that I'm looking through and my preference. So yeah, it's a process of exploration for myself as well, as we're
Mm.
speaking. And like you say, like it's highly therapeutic, I feel like. And yeah, it's a shock therapy, really. Yeah, watching yourself and hearing yourself on a weekly basis for hours is yeah, it's confronting yourself with, wow, you really cannot just ask a question. You always have to add your sauce, don't you, Maxi? That's something that I've really realized. Like, can you just shut up? Can you just finish a thought? Also something. Like I'm so transparent in the way that I'm thinking that it gets all over the place sometimes. I'll start somewhere, and then in the middle of the sentence, I'll go this way, and then this way, and then this way. And sometimes it even hurts my ears hearing that, because I'm just like so open and transparent with what's alive in that moment, just following that intuitive thread, um,
Yeah, imagine what it's like for people with
simultaneously. Wow.
ADHD, because that's a real thing, right? It's like real, real like thought that's sporadic and very tangentially speaking. It's a
Yeah, and I
reality.
admire people who don't have that. Yeah, but
Yeah, that,
it's
yeah, the
also coming to
judgment. Yeah,
terms with, yeah, with where I'm at. Yeah, exactly.
for sure. Yeah.
So yeah, bringing compassion and talking about all that and in a work. I've spoken to you about it prior to the recording, that I want to speak to you about the work with men, in the spaces of men. And I'm coming out of an intense session just yesterday, again, just bringing so much compassion and healing, towards and for myself, because I feel like I'm holding so much space here in these conversations. Like, I need a space where I can bring my stuff,
Mm.
where that is being held and looked at and heard and
Yeah.
seen
Yeah.
and witnessed. And so I don't know. Yeah, I wanted to open up a space for you to yeah, enter and share what that work, especially among men, has done for you.
Hmm. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for speaking so openly as well about the things you're witnessing. And just on that, which might bridge us nicely into more male spaces, I created a group. I invited several men into an online audiobook club around COVID time, consciously inviting certain people that I did not share the same political agreement with. And it was a testing time for a lot of people in a psychological sense also, because we ended up disagreeing and having different opinions and proclivities towards things. And I think it's really important for me to check my own bias, because we all have one. And we are confident in the things we believe and we hold close to ourselves and we know. But there are so many aspects and truths. There is not one truth. There are truths. There might be one truth. We can get into that. But in this sense, I created an online group where we would discuss resources, and it was powerful to lean into that and lean into different ways of viewing. Because if I had the same experience and I was surrounded by the same people, environments, upbringing, all these factors, I no doubt would think that's the way they do. And I really believe that. I think it's nuanced. It's not as simple. But everyone else I see as doing the best with what they've got. At moments, I've thought like them more in different environments. And I've noticed myself get more swayed to thinking a certain way. But then having to spend time alone to then really align and think and tune in and like listen. And that's been a real practice of like tuning into, I guess, more of my truth, not being so influenced by other people, and just checking in on that bias. So I guess a reflection for you in terms of the challenging and wanting to, maybe bridge that gap a little bit more and invite people on that are going to check your own bias, because I think that makes for a great conversation when there is different points of view, and it's how you navigate that and how you do that in a way that's conscious is very inspiring. And we lack in the modern day, for sure. Like cancel
Yeah.
culture, everything that
Yeah.
exists at the moment. There's too many people in both polarities. There's the middle ground is uncomfortable for people just to say, oh, I don't know about that, especially in the online space. What we hear is like, this is the truth. And it's appealing to us as an evolved primate. I think we do gravitate to the loudest person in the room, the person who has great posture and speaks so confidently. I think that does persuade us more than we know. And you'll see this online and anyone that's kind of, that's why there's a certain, also I noticed this, if people have money or like a lot of attention, we'll automatically give them respect or like think they've done something to warrant achieving that. I think Sam Harris is a perfect example, who wrote a book which I just listened to, and I'm like, I've respected this man so much and I don't even know why. Maybe because other people do and he's on big platforms, and I just think we give away our power to people that perception of power have power because they have a big platform or they have a lot of money. And as Joe Rogan said once, it's like, you think that just because not a lot of people have what they have, that it's valuable. Stay with me. So we think that having a lot of money and having flash cars is valuable, but it's just that not a lot of people have that. It doesn't mean it's valuable, you know? So I think that's the
Yeah.
same in terms of like putting people on platforms and pedestals before we've even checked out why. And the root of that was really of understanding, like, what am I biased towards? What am I, like, putting on a pedestal? So I think surrounding yourself with people who do challenge you is invaluable. Friendship groups, like, we're all in our own echo chambers, and I think more and more in the podcast, in the social media space, we are existing in these circles, things being algorithms. Algorithms are raising our children, and they are sending them what they already know or what they already believe. And you could look at the political system of how that was manipulated and how people vote, and it's very messy. But, like, it's really important to just get out of your own way and to spend time in other places, travel, and just get different perspectives. That was probably the biggest catalyst of, like, self-growth and development for me, is like traveling, leaning into what is the common thread of us all, but what are the things that I'm wrong about? You know, how we do things over here compared to how things are done in other countries. And then really having to sit with that discomfort of, fuck, oh, maybe I was wrong about this. You know, judgment and pointing the finger of, like, what people should be doing, but then realizing it's not the same for everyone. So yeah, I just thought I'd sprinkle that in. It took a little bit longer to kind of,
Yeah, you're good.
speak to it. So the men's work, yeah, brother. The medicine of our era, it feels, brothers, men coming into circle, coming back into connection. In circle, everything's reflected, and you cannot hide. I really love being in circle with other men, other people, and I feel for too long we have not been in circle. We've not come together in this shape that honors every part of us. So it can be very simple. It's like, when was the last time you did share space? Did sit in circle with your family, with your brothers, and really just held space for each other? That was not part of my upbringing. That was not part of my education. Yes, there might have been the odd time, maybe, I don't know, some nursery flashbacks of, like, you know, singing songs or something in circle, but, like, you know, it didn't really exist in that way. And what's happening now is more and more we are honoring each other and witnessing each other in these spaces, and calling each other into the circle, you know, stepping into that circle, speaking truth and asking for support. The integrity of the circle is so powerful. And when you've got people that are holding that and facilitating connection and facilitating a safe environment, nurturing a safe environment, asking and calling forward for people to speak to their needs and to agree on certain things. Given the right environment, so much is possible for us. So that is one thing I've realized, is we do lack spaces. It was very apparent to me that given the right environment, given the right space, it's very easy to drop into your emotion, to speak from your heart, to honor yourself and others. But the environment and the spaces that we do lack. And I've got this piece on growing up, teenagers, when I was a teenager, growing up into adolescence. Chaos, really. Like, there was no people modeling behavior for me that I respected, that I was moved by. Have a think about your upbringing and really tune into where the elders were. Like, were there men, women, parents present that were really standing for something, confident, giving you time of day, like just really there for you. There might have been, but for me, it wasn't that common. I don't think I really had that much of a connection to my friends' parents, or, you go around to their house and you'd never see their parents. It wasn't a thing. They were never there, really. And that is one thing that was missing. It's like a sense of elderhood. And you could look at ceremony, ritual, initiation, these sorts of things that we don't lack in the West. And for rituals to exist, you need elders present. And these are the things that we're leaning into now, of like, how do we now become that? Because in our culture, there's not that many that I know that are holding these spaces, that are guiding men into presence, like fulfillment, contentment, peace, like all these things that we do want and are conducive to a meaningful life. We don't really see that being modeled. It was always on me as a kid. It was always on me. I was I was an adult. I was responsible. I was like being punished because I'd done certain things. But when you look at me in isolation, like I went to prison, I was getting in trouble every time I'd go to town, fighting. I was going to court, denying everything. There was no like ownership. I just ignored the problem, kept moving forward in this destructive manner. Didn't know what I valued. Didn't know what I valued until about 5 years ago. And I was just a wrecking ball that was like a train wreck when everything came to a head. And I had to really own up to everything in one huge moment at this point when I was in Crown Court at the age of 19. And it was a real big moment. My parents were there, and I'd just denied everything previously. And I'd had GBH, ABH, common assault, perverting the course of justice, all these things that were, I was denying. I was in such a denial. But I had to just come clean and own it. But I felt really let down by everything around me, from what I've come to realize. But at the time, I internalized it all. And I do believe that we do this. I'll just kind of wrap up here because I know I've gone off on a huge tangent. But I do believe we do this when we see misbehavior or children that are acting out, being violent, abusive, like just really not preferable behavior. We isolate them and we blame and we punish in isolation, and we don't look at the environment. We don't look at the causes, the root. We generally treat symptoms, and we don't have spaces where we can really understand what is actually going on for that individual. And that's due to many factors. But for me, what I've come to realize is that I was really let down, and I was having a healthy reaction to an environment that didn't serve me, is what I say. But yeah, I'll let you jump in.
What made you decide to do things differently in that moment? To take responsibility, to go out of denial?
If not now, then it's going to be even worse. There was this voice. It was just like, if you don't, and it took so much to really say, yes, it was me. I couldn't even speak the words, I'd suppressed so much. It really felt like if it wasn't, I was also backed into a corner. There was no way out. There was no good option. If I'd have kept denying it, would have been even worse, and I could see that because all the evidence and everything that was against me, I had it written on my forehead. Like it was so obvious that all this was. It was so obvious. I couldn't see it, and I didn't want to see it. But it was just, it felt like the moment, and if I don't do it now, it actually felt like the easier path to take, but the hardest at the same time, because of the suppression, because of the lack of, and the snowball of not speaking these things when they happened. So,
You remember how it felt once you did?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there was a lot of relief. There was an energy that just left, the heaviness that I was carrying for so long. It felt very honorable to do that. The truth sets us free, right? So it felt like I felt healthier. I felt cleaner. I felt this energy lift, and I was like, right, now I just got to do my time. I've got to like really just face up. It felt like a real initiation actually into stepping up and becoming a little bit more. I mean, the journey was long, but that felt like a big step that I've not honoured as much as I likely should. But there are no shoulds, there are no shoulds.
How did that inform what you're doing now?
The biggest thing around how it informs me is that I can relate to these signals that a lot of people are having, which is how depressing it feels, how lonely it feels, how isolated you can be, and how easily and how little it takes to make one decision, and then a few decisions down the line you're in a completely different space, completely different environment, and it doesn't take much for, after a few decisions, things to become quite normal. It was quite normal for me, not to tell the truth, it was quite normal for me to smoke crack. It was quite normal for me to, deny and not tell the truth. And I knew that it wasn't me, it wasn't like defining me, but also it just felt so normal. I just think how quickly you can get into an area of your life which just doesn't feel good, but it just becomes what you do. It becomes your habit and how you get through and how you cope. So how much I can relate to people are going through like a real hard experience, because I know me at my worst, and whenever I see something going on, I can truly relate to what contributes to that, and how easy it is for people to really get to that point. It doesn't take much.
Right. So why men? What's so specific, different about spaces with only men?
Yeah, so I tried a lot of things. I went traveling, set me in a different direction, started connecting with new people, people who really like wanted to know about themselves, wanted to learn wisdom, like really tapping into meditation, yoga. Went on that journey for a while and read books, devoured podcasts, developed an unhealthy addiction to learning things, consuming content, and trying many different things. Like cold water therapy was a huge practice that I really delved into for many years. Doing breath work, doing all sorts of stuff that made me feel good in the moment, made me feel really healthy. And I was rewriting a lot of the stories that I tell myself, the self-love journey that we all go on to really change things that aren't working for us, generally because we feel like we don't deserve good things, or changing friendships and just prioritizing myself a bit more. But the real healing didn't take place until I started putting myself in environments with other men where I was being reflected a lot of the same patterns that got me into trouble. I rejected that side of me for so long, rejected the masculine energies that got me into trouble, the warrior energy, even the shadow side of the lover, the real like addicted lover. And these shadow energies got me into trouble. So of course I reject them. I swing all the way into the feminine sides, the real calm and flow and ease and more subtle energies of yoga. And even though the practice itself is quite masculine, there's still this kind of essence of more feminine. And then everything I didn't accept, of course, goes into your shadow, and then it's not understood, it's not dealt with, and it just sits there. A lot of the time it's projected onto others. I suffered a lot with judgment. I would judge so many people, and it really caused me a lot of pain because I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do. But until I would shine light on those masculine energies in circle with other men and really like come into a better relationship with this energy that exists, the chaos that exists, and the capacity I've got for destruction, for harm, for violence, really just meeting that and bringing it into the light, sending it love, and just, it's really hard to define. Like I respect people like John Wineland and people in this space that really have a careful, beautiful approach to speaking to these energies and how we alchemize all of it. And it's hard to define, though. It's hard to define what does go on in that process. And that needs love as well. It's like, yeah, we have words for certain things, but feeling is really where the transformation happens. A lot of things, therapies, exist in this verbal way, and processing is important, and there's space for that, but also to get really into here. And this is what I do on my events with men. It's really about feeling and acting. It's easier to act your way into a new way of thinking, not think your way into a new way of acting. So action is really where it happens. So the dance for me, like being on a dance floor and then going through the motions, going through heartache, grief, fucking hell, like grief is a huge thing that we don't have time or space for. And these energies and these personalities that we have, which make up our personal reality, right? Joe Dispenza. And until we really meet them and understand them, grieve them, let them go, let them die, they still keep kind of a hold onto us. So like there's so many practices that I invoke and invite people into, like dance, like real like energetic anger practices, to really like give voice to that energy that sits underneath. Like anger was a huge energy that I didn't have any room for, and I couldn't even access. I mean, of course, in moments it came out, but it was never in a conscious way. And we can dive into anger if you want, because yeah, that's been a big learning for me of how I've reapproached like that energy.
Yeah, I just want to honor that share. And I've read the most beautiful quote about anger from Connor Beaton the other day. I mean, he reposted it, and it was a Carl Jung quote around. You already got it. Like it's with like anger was speaking to me for such a long time, something like that, and turned out it was grief all along, or something like that. So beautiful. Like
Yeah,
it's
love
it's
that.
put so beautiful. Hang on, I wanna
You gonna get
pull
it
it
up?
up. Yeah. It's
Was
here.
it on? Yeah, I was in
Okay.
Connor's Man Talks group for just over a year.
Oh wow. Oh wow. I sat with my anger long enough until she told me her real name was Grief. Mic drop. Holy shit.
Yeah, man.
How was the work with him? How was that?
Yeah, I mean the way he holds the cool is very much like a coaching. It was less intimate, which is what I've took a lot of influence from how he held that space and how he guided every call with a breathing practice, which was always so pivotal in bringing myself into presence and really just like feeling, okay, now we can begin, you know. So he held it really well. There was a lot of men in there, but he had such a great ability to call someone in and get them out of their head and into their unconscious by doing certain practices with them, um, which was great to go through. I think what was missing was the intimacy and was the real like him being in the arena as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
I never felt him in that space or his processes. For me, he didn't bring his humanness. Although he talks about his addictions and the way he struggled with things, but again, like I want to feel someone, I want to really like connect with them, and that's why I really try and embody it because I know it works for me so much. And like when I'm in a space, like I'm in the trenches, I'm there sharing shit too, and I'm working through a lot, but also honoring that I'm holding that space. So as you alluded to before, like every coach needs a space, every coach needs a coach. So I'm doing my work as well. And my friend David, he had the initiative to create this thing called the Chieftains Council, and I'm so blessed to have been invited to that. And it's a very inclusive space. So, you know, anyone holding a circle and events for men, you know, are invited into that. But it's like a way of space holders holding space and also tuning into certain values, certain ethos of how we agree on certain things and trying to regulate each other and educate also. And that was a valuable thing to do this year, which helped me a lot. So yeah, I think that's important. Like how much work are the people doing? Because
Yep.
your work's never done, you know, your work's never done.
Yep.
Every level has a new devil and it's constant. No one's fully healed. No one's at the top of the mountain. Run from them if they say they are. That's always been apparent. And yeah, I'm in there too. So I want to be, you know, that's the human connection around it.
It's incredible to hear your story and how you speak about it from the point of how I got to know you and how I perceive you today. It's nearly unimaginable for me to imagine you as being that other version of yourself and doing those things that you've done. Like I find it, and this is also the power for me of men's work, is the multi-layeredness and the multi-dimensionality of the human experience. And especially with men, like you think you understand someone, something, just to ever and over again get reminded that you just know nothing. And don't make assumptions. Don't make assumptions. Like the 4 agreements are spot on, and especially that one. I find myself getting surprised and flabbergasted again and again and again. And it is the questions and the stuff that comes up where I just yesterday again was reminded of so many aspects of myself that are there, but I chose subconsciously to not look at them, and therefore they are not really as present, and I don't associate them with me, but they are clearly there, and
Huge.
they make up a part of who I am and how I carry myself. And so I was just deeply inspired now again by your share and your story. And I was just like, yeah, okay, I really know that I don't know anything. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
So I just wanted to offer that.
A couple of years ago, when I was under the perception that I'd done so much work and I would consider myself truly on the path and aligned, I was having an argument with my partner, and I punched a wall, and I was like, oh wow, it's a real big moment of me thinking that wasn't in me anymore. Oh, that's not me anymore, we say that, it's not me. But it is. It's very much in me. And it's really important, I feel, to honor that is always going to be in you. But how you respond to that and how you keep honoring that it was always in you to do things that aren't preferable, to do things that are very reactionary, to yell at someone in traffic, like whatever it might be. It is in you. But like, do you need to keep checking in on that? Do you need to always know that you're on the journey, and to not judge it being in you or not being in you, but just know that when it does come out, when things do rear their head, and they obviously in intimate relationships, high stakes relationships. There's a great book called How to Navigate Conflict in High Stakes Relationships. I think these high stakes relationships are where these shadow sides of ourselves do rear their head. So it could be your boss, could be your child, could be your parent, like your partner. And these emotions come up because it's really just, it's this, it's this need that's not being addressed, or there's this energy around, people not honoring you or needs not being met. And when I punched this wall, I remember just going for a walk and just, it was just illuminating that this was in me still, and I had to just honor that. And that was a huge lesson. Of course, it's always then what I do in response to that. Do I shut it down? Do I pretend like it didn't happen? Did I blame someone else? Do I just ignore it? Or do I really acknowledge it and own up to it? And, communicate what I'm going to do about that. Do I need help? Do I need support? I haven't got this figured out, I need to lean into what that was and maybe take some time and just really own up to that truth of what that was communicating to me. So it's never really in the action,
How would you describe your relationship to anger today?
My relationship with anger now, I create space for it, like consciously create space for the anger. I was on a journey with it because where do we have spaces to connect with this anger that has a lot of wisdom, right? Anger holds a lot of wisdom and is a messenger. Like all of these emotions, we can listen to them, we can understand ourselves a little bit more through the lens of anger and generally what's underneath that anger. And for me, I had to create space for it. And the best place for me was underwater. So I would go out into the ocean every day and connect to it. And I would get submerged and just start really activating and bringing up this emotion and just for as an exercise and really getting really clear on, the anger that sat underneath me. And what tended to happen after that was grief. It was sadness. Sadness was underneath it, for me. But yeah, at the moment, I'm holding space for it now and again. I generally do that as a practice on the men's community. We have certain practices around it, and we'll just hold space for each other, screaming into a pillow, or just really getting close and personal with it. So yeah, man, I think it holds a lot of wisdom, and it's a deep emotion that also the story we had around it is that it's not acceptable. It wasn't when we were younger, and it's really important to re-establish connection with that anger because it's one of the primary colors, right? One of the primary emotions: anger, sadness, fear, and joy. And it's quite a simple framework. If anyone's really head-led and trying to understand what's going on underneath, it's like, okay, well, which emotion is it? Which one can I identify? Is it fear? Is it sadness? Is it anger? Or is it joy?
How would you describe the relationship with your father, and how does that relationship inform the work you're doing today?
Could you be a little bit more specific on? Yeah, could you be a bit more specific? Because I could
Yeah,
talk a lot
I
about
can. I
the
can. Yeah,
journey
I
we've
can.
been on, where I'm at now, which is very different to where I've been before. But yeah, any bit more specificities would be great.
Yeah, I give you the context. So it's going to be part of the next circle I hold. They are circling around themes. Next theme is the father. And I found within my journey to be the biggest wound, to be the biggest gold at the same time. So you speaking about what's underneath, anger,
Mm.
and the potential that it holds, brought up the father for me. And so I got curious to hear from you how that relationship was for you. And I guess to make it a little bit more narrow, I guess I am curious to explore the links between the person that you described earlier on and the behavior that you displayed when you were younger, and the man that you are today. So I see a big evolution there, and I was wondering how that was potentially informed by the relationship with your father and how it changed to where you are right now. So did the relationship as well change through your own growth and healing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, thanks for that. It's been a big journey. It still continues to be. The relationship I have with my dad at the moment is a distant one emotionally. I've had to really try a different approach. And I'll give everyone an insight into this because it's yeah, I think it can really be useful and helpful for people, because it's not linear. And I think trying different approaches are really useful. And the more and more we get to know ourselves, we generally establish more boundaries, what's okay for us and what's not. But the context of the home and parents, generally, we're going to have a different approach than we would with our friends or people we don't know, because there's so much emotion there, there's so much history, and triggers are very present. And at the moment, I'm consciously distancing of like, let's just have some time out from making so much of an effort. Going on this big journey, I redefined a lot of my values, and family was one of them. And going back home and noticing that wasn't right for everyone. They didn't share that same value around, let's sit and discuss and just share our experience, and just have a conversation and have time for each other. And it was hurtful because it wasn't always reciprocated. And everyone has different priorities, and different ways of being. And yeah, we all want to connect, but on the level in which we operate. That makes sense. So someone might want to connect whilst watching TV. That's what they feel is right, is connection. But for me, yeah, it was going back to home, but acknowledging I've got these different values, and knowing that that's the biggest classroom. It's the biggest arena where I can know what the triggers are, where the incongruencies are, where, as Peter Crone would say, like where you're not free. Like everyone else is revealing to you where you're not free. So when you're triggered, it's like, there's some there's some trapped stuff there that I need to perhaps lean into and understand. So it's just a mirroring of where I'm not free in myself. So someone can only affect you, someone can only harm you to the degree, obviously not excusing physical abuse or there's other things that aren't, but like emotional stuff, it's something can only really affect you to the degree that you believe it. So I'd return back home, and there'd be triggers there, there'd be uncomfortable stuff that I'd sit with, and there'd always be this joke around the time of incarceration, imprisonment, or like the things that I used to get up to, and that just used to repeat and repeat. And it did affect me for a long time. It did affect how that I just wanted acceptance, and I just wanted connection. I just wanted the love, which wasn't present. So I was also sitting with that. But let's just sticking with my dad. Anger was a big thing. That was his primary emotion. That was what I felt when I was younger, and that was a part of the story as well. It was the rejection of the things that I saw from him that I didn't want to become. And it's interesting how it works, because the more you reject certain things about your father, the more you become them.
Yeah.
You will become this person. The more and more you try not to. It's John, what's his name? Not John Favecki, the other guy, John DeMartini. He's more of like an American business coach, but he's an incredible philosopher. And he says, that's quite simple, but your biggest voids become your biggest values. So the things that you didn't get as a kid, you may value the most. You know, you may want to make a stand for the most. And of course, it can go the opposite way, but that can work like that, and it does often happen. So the things that I, didn't receive, I now value the most. But when those things aren't still getting met because I value them the most, it's really uncomfortable to sit with. How much can I accept, in that arena of like the things that I'm just not getting but want, and how much can I communicate that? Can I just love unconditionally in that space, and then know that that is the energy in which anyone can feel accepted and feel like they can maybe lean into things that aren't comfortable for them. It's such a big topic, man, going back to the home. And then for anyone that doesn't feel seen, heard, held, agreed with, like connection at home, it's a big conversation of this journey that people likely that are listening and are undertaking, and may go back to the home and realize how much work they still need to do, or what they may never get from their parents that they really want. And maybe you want them to come on the journey with you because you notice things that aren't serving them, judging perhaps, but you notice it's just like the same with you come to friendships and you're doing a lot of change and work on yourself, and then it shines a light on where other people aren't. So people like to stay in that safety, they stay in that comfort of not changing. So they put you down, or they'll, just like what I said earlier. Go ahead, yeah.
From your perspective, and I understand that to get to the source, like I would need to speak to your dad, but from what you perceive, from your point of view, from your perspective, from what you take in, what do you feel like is alive within your dad when he's looking at you, when he's seeing your journey? How do you feel like he's perceiving that?
Yeah, this example might shine light on that. I have a great relationship when I'm on the phone with him and not in person, and then it's the opposite with my mum. So I always think that's quite interesting. Like, what's going on there? And I feel my dad feels a lot safer. When I'm with him, there's a lot of triggers, how I'm living my life, his stories about how I should live my life, how he worked so hard to give me a better life and how I'm choosing to live it. This kind of cultural narrative of what is success and what is, my judgment is that shapes a lot of this discomfort around how I'm choosing to be. Also the journey that I've been on and how I'm eloquent and how I speak to things and how I know myself and how I can set boundaries, that may also trigger him. So it's going to shine a light on aspects where he's not able to do that so well. And what do I do in response to that, Because it's uncomfortable for us both. Do I shy away? Do I play small? Or do I just show up with compassion and know that in context of his experience, this all makes sense? In context of his upbringing and his marker of being a good dad is that he gave me a life that he didn't. And that is his success. And anything else is just, so. When I come back and I'm saying like, you're not showing up for this, and I've got new levels of what is acceptable for me, but I'm defining them. The journey I've been on is actually it's a one around redefining my values and what is actually what I want for myself, what I expect for myself, what I'm not okay with. But like, those aren't the same for other people. So I feel like I have to honor that I'm moving in this direction, but other people, they have no context for that. So what's normal for them and how to treat people and how to, they exist in their circles and they have no context for what I'm talking about or how I speak or how I want to, I want to live, maybe it's food I'm eating. They just can't connect with that. Or maybe it's the way I'm speaking or what I'm speaking about or what I'm passionate about. If they have no context to connect with that, then it's going to be hard. And I have to take some ownership of that.
Yeah, I'm asking myself why that actually be relevant in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um,
Why it would be relevant?
yeah, why would it be relevant for you to take that into consideration as much as you do?
Because imagine if you've got a friend and they go, you have a great relationship and they go out into the world and they go off traveling and they do have all this experience and they come back with new ideals and they come back with new values, but they expect you to meet them there. But your relationship was always formed on the things that you still hold, right?
Yep.
But they're expecting you to meet them where they're at. And you're like, well, you're coming back with all these new things that you want me to meet them and you want to expect me to meet you where you're at. I just think there's a lack of accountability there. This is like the same in a relationship when one person's on a path of understanding and self-development and growth. I want to grow. But when they met, that wasn't the case. So this is like a new level of context. And I always say, like, was this present when you met? Were you always the one that was wanting to grow? And did they understand that initially? And generally it's not the case. So I think there needs to be more accountability taken of like when one of you decides to grow or be more or just do different things. Is that being expected of the other person? And are you projecting like all that onto someone else? I just think there's a level of like, are you expecting them to go on that journey with you, or can you meet them where they're at? But also honor, what's a new no for you?
Mm-hmm.
What's a new no?
Yeah, it's super interesting to explore that and to find one's stand with that. I find myself being torn between two opposites when it comes to that topic. Because yes, as you say, I feel like it's where the real work lies. As Ram Dass said, you think you're enlightened, spend a weekend with your family. Yes, it's the battleground. It's where the rubber hits the road, where really it shows. And I feel like, and this is something that I've learned from one of my mentors, just like this, can I develop that curiosity that I have for the world? Can I develop that for my parents, for my family? Can I meet them with the amount of curiosity and non-judgment that I have towards so many other people, strangers, people that I don't have any connection with, or way less of a connection with, and certainly background with, on the podcast, on just interpersonal connections in my life, like in new spaces, I don't know, going into fucking retreat spaces and opening up entirely to a stranger within 2 minutes and eye gazing and exposing my soul, like, and being genuinely curious for hours in a conversation with someone. And it's just like, I want to get to the bottom of you and your soul and your story and all of that. and understand you. No judgment here, you know, and I see different views, I see different opinions, but I can easily hold them. I'm like, okay, that's yours, that's mine, fine,
Mm-hmm.
all good. Can I develop that with my parents? Why can I not see the small boy within my father? Why can I not see the small girl within my mom?
Yeah.
And be genuinely curious about where they're coming from, what has moved them when they were small, how was it
Yeah.
like growing up, you know? So that's there.
You
And
asked them that?
then there is a new understanding. uh I am in the process
That's,
yeah, I'm in the
yeah.
process of moving into that. Yeah.
It's a powerful question, right? When you start to get context on your parents' upbringing and how things were for them, like just that simple question of like, yeah, tell me about your childhood. Like it's a powerful way in, and it can shift a lot because I know my parents don't talk about it very much. They don't look back to understand things. They don't really have that way of seeing the world. This is a rich conversation. There's so much, and I love talking about it because, because there's a lot of, as you said, it's like the rubber hits the road. There's been a lot of learning there for me. There is a powerful book called, and I think what we're talking about here is your ability to connect with a generation of people that weren't taught to understand themselves or weren't, taught to really have a capacity for emotion and understanding. Not for everyone, but that's true for my parents. Like it's emotionally not, where we are currently or how we're speaking. Like this would be very full on for them. And there's a book called How to Deal with Emotionally Immature Parents. Yeah, it's a great manual to navigate these sorts of things.
What
But
did
yeah,
you
what you
learn
were
from it?
stress responses was a big one. Like, what is a stress response? Black and white thinking. It's either this or that, and that was definitely true for my dad, who would have no room for the curiosity or the grey areas in life, which aren't always so straightforward. There's a big piece around like what contributes to emotional immaturity, and it's stress and it's trauma, and it can be a stress response to then start thinking in these kind of like really rigid ways, because it's safe there, and then you develop a story around the world being out to get you and the world being unsafe because it was when you were children. And I think it does come from that. There was no capacity for emotion, and we get quite deep here because it's developmental situations where it wasn't safe to be you. It wasn't safe to deal with or express your emotions. So you stopped, and you didn't think that they were useful because they got you in trouble. So you would just stop being more emotional, like expressing your needs, and it causes black and white thinking and certain things like that. So there was a big chapter on that sort of stuff, which in context it makes perfect sense. It really does. But yeah, it's a rich
So
conversation.
yeah, it is. And I want to bring something in here like as an offering also for myself, just to bring it up to the surface again, because it's something that has been lingering in the back of my mind and heart and soul to some degree, and I would be very interested in what you say about it, on a soul level, God's perspective on it, underneath the this incarnation, my story, my parents, like this thread that is woven between us and that connects us, on a larger scale. It's like this, okay, soul incarnation this time around. And I'm like, yes, so biologically there is a thread woven. But does it go deeper? Does it go deeper than that? Is there a responsibility that is deeper than that? And what
Hmm.
does that mean for the trajectory of my life going forward from now? Where do I place my priorities? So I'm thinking about, so parents is like very direct, but then I think like extended family, I think like uncles, aunts, cousins, people in my family. How do they show up in the world? What's my relationship to that? And I felt very bad for a very long time, still very present now, of not cultivating a deeper relationship with them. Um, and it just entered my orbit, that just to question it a little bit. And I'm still investigating. I'm still investigating if there is an obligation on a soul level. Is there like a responsibility that I have to cultivate a relationship with them? What's my job in that? Versus, and because like it's not, is it chosen, you know, is it chosen, is there something for me to learn, that I'm obligated to learn, from a higher perspective, or is it more like my obligation to foster new relationships that sort of like from this place that I am right now in, and the people that attracts, is that my obligation to foster those relationships and to prioritize them, and to really go deep in that and build my own family eventually, you know, become a parent myself, you know, is that more where also some part of my purpose is as someone who is conscious and who wants to live from a good place, you know. That's really at the forefront, like it's coming more to the forefront of my awareness,
Mm.
to contemplate that.
Do you know why?
That's a lot. It's pretty deep, but like what, I don't know. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, do you know why you believe there's an obligation? Or you're entertaining it?
Yes, because it's a belief that supplies me with the right to exist. That's a belief system that I have within me.
Mm.
So I have a belief within me that says I was gifted with so much that awareness is nearly,
Mhm.
um, too much sometimes. Oftentimes, it's like suffocating
Yeah.
to be
How
aware of the
fortunate you were.
privilege, to be a, yeah, to be aware of the privilege and to be aware of the responsibility that come with that privilege and those abilities.
Hmm.
So I feel like on a very deep level, there's like deep shit here, and I'm fully exposing my soul here. But like I feel that like I would lose my sense of purpose and my right to exist if I wasn't to make something out of this. So so I'm that's why I'm entertaining those thoughts and I'm entertaining those contemplations, because I feel like time's ticking to some degree.
Mm.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah,
Time's an invention, by
yeah,
the
it's
way.
pretty interesting. Well, you know, I know so many, like I could throw you out like smart things to say right now and like concepts, but this is like just honestly how what's
Yeah, man.
happening in my system.
Yeah, bro.
And
Do you want me to share my thoughts? What do you need from me?
yeah, please, please. No, please, please. I would be curious. Yes, that's
Yeah, man.
why I shared as well.
For me, my right to exist isn't dependent on anything. It's not on me, but it's in me. And it's in me to make a conscious choice about how I choose to play my role, run my best leg. Like the baton's in my hand. How do I want to use it? How do I want to really connect to life? And what do I want to stand for? Do I want to choose to see the opportunity in healing relationships, in being there for bloodlines, etc.? That's how I view things. I don't believe there are any shoulds, ought tos, pre notions on like what we have to do here. I try and stay away from that sort of way of thinking. However, in context, if there's like deep admiration and gratitude for the way you were raised and the way you were brought up, how you were brought up, and you want to show that gratitude through like spending the rest of your life helping those around you, then great. But finding that edge of where it compromises on what's going to fulfill you and sustain you to run your best leg. So it's a beautiful deep dive into the journey that we're all on. For me, it makes sense to not pass on and pass down the things that were passed to me, to run my best leg with a ran in my family till it ran into me type attitude. So things that ran in my family, that hard energy that carried through all the men down my timeline, I want to use that as fuel, but also stop the unhealthy behaviors that came with it. So for me, it's that approach. And for me, that might look like distancing myself from certain people for a while so I can do my work, so I can prioritize my mission. I think it comes down to conscious choice for me. Like what makes sense for me? How do I want to choose to navigate this with like logic, rational mind, but also my heart and what's true for me, what's good for me, what is in alignment with how I want to choose to spend my time and who to choose that spend that time with also. Because if you surround yourself with a lot of people in your family, that you will start to become that, you will start to connect with the way they're living, what they're eating, how they're associating, like all those things. So we need to protect our energy. Like we need to really honor what is going to fulfill and nourish us. So what does that come into the conversation, and how do you navigate those sorts of things? So I don't know if that feeds in or helps.
Well, it's triggering in the best way possible.
Yeah, because ultimately
so
we
like,
all can. Sorry, just a final little sprinkle. We all can agree,
yeah,
like we have to be the vessel. We have to be fully honoring our self to serve anyone and be fit for service. So where does that line get placed? Where do you then? And of course, it's context dependent. We're contextual beings. Like everything exists in context with everything else. So you can't isolate yourself to like say this is where I stop in self-serving and serving, and this is where I have got more in me and a capacity for more, so I can give more. But it's that dance between the two. I think that is the fundamental thing we need to look at, and is what's true for our time. Is like we really need to nourish and be fit for service before we can give anything to anyone else. Otherwise, what are we trying to promote and encourage, right? And how do we want to preach everywhere we go, but use words where necessary?
There was like this question piling up now. I guess it's coming down to the question of like, is there a responsibility that we carry towards our parents?
No.
Right.
Because for me, that has to be the choice that we make, because that can't be universal. That can't be universal, because there are some people who, with that mindset, and Josh Connolly talks about this a lot in he's coming out of a book, but he talks about this toxic parent situation that a lot of kids are in, and there needs to be more education around, even alcohol in the home, verbal abuse, things like that kids are very normalized to this kind of toxic way. And if that was the universal truth, it's not serving a whole load of people. And I think that's a dangerous idea, personally.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But Josh goes into it a little too much for me. And I think he's gone way too far in one direction, but I'll have him on the podcast to talk about that.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I purposely put that question in that way because, yes, I agree. It's a spectrum. But I also do believe that there is an inclination of today's youth to highly over focus on one's own well-being and good without acknowledging the roots, without acknowledging the ancestors, without acknowledging the lineage, and also putting oneself on a pedestal and oneself in terms of like the generation that we're living in, that we understood so much that our parents did not understand, and that there's judgment there's judgment in a sense of like one is better than the other. And I feel like it needs to be looked at individually and judged upon like case by case. So there's no general answer here. But I do believe that there is some sort of, at least like a genuine investigation of like where does that maybe initial need for distancing come from, and is it based upon my own shortcomings and my own ignorance to some degree and my own lack of responsibility that I'm only looking towards my parents to, like they are God and they weren't able to provide me with this whole list of things, and therefore I resent them. So I see that there is like, we all need to take a good look in the mirror and then come to a conclusion whether or not that's true or not. Like I don't want to, like, I'm also not ignorant to the fact that there's very, very toxic and bad behavior and unhealthy behavior in households and relationship dynamics. Don't get me wrong at all. Like, and it's needed to cut ties, but I also feel like there is a place and a time to make a stand for taking responsibility for more than yourself and honor what your parents have given you and give back also to some degree. So I guess it's a dance.
Yeah, for sure. It is a dance. Yeah, you're totally right. there may be a lack of that in generations. It's very easy now not to be accountable to our parents. It's not. It's very easy to sustain ourselves without them. And yeah, there's a real big shift happening. There's a real big disconnection. I also tune into how different it is for generations now. You know, in 50 years, so much has changed. Whole culture has changed and shifted, and how that separates the family. I know
Yep.
the core of
Yep.
everything is the family. The family is all we have. It's all we all have, really. It's where the nucleus of it all. I think we have generally got it wrong in terms of the nucleus family. But in terms of the nexus, the center of it all is where it begins. It's where all this stuff holds most of its value in how we show up in that capacity. And yeah, it's a big part of the conversation, because we can go to these events and retreats and we can live a life of high value and integrity, but unless we are really embodying that in the home, there's a reason why we get triggered there the most. It's because that's where it needs most healing.
Yep.
And what gets revealed to us in that space. It's easy to hide. It's easy to go off and live in a cave. But to be in the arena really is to be in the family and to do the work there. Yeah.
I agree. If it's safe, okay? So like, let's make this, drive this home as well. If it's safe, if if there's violence, if there is substance abuse, if there is something along those lines, it's not safe. You don't do it, for sure. That's what you need. But I feel like we should judge honestly and make a decision from an honest place, and yeah, just try to be as integral as we can be with handling those situations. Yeah, so that was beautiful that we went there. I felt like it's important, and I feel like it's, yeah, there's much to be learned also from, I don't know, I'm just thinking of, I mean, cultures as the ones that you are in right now, in Ibiza, in South America, in more like in the Southern Hemisphere, where family as a value seems to be an entirely different thing. Like the family is in the middle of people's lives, and it, you know, it goes into the infrastructure of people's lives way more than it does for what I see, for example, in Germany or in the States, or I don't know, probably also the UK. So I see, yeah, just like generational homes as well. You know, it's normal for parents and grandparents to live in one household, and everyone is taking care of everyone, and it's like this cyclical sort of thing. So I see also value in that, and I see, I see sort of like this passing down of knowledge. You know, elders, what we've spoken about earlier, the need for elders, that transmission of wisdom and passing down of all of that. So yeah, much to be said there. It's multi-layered, it's multi-dimensional for sure.
Yeah, man. Thanks for sharing that and bringing that home. It is, I can hear within that how much it means to you, though. How much the family is important to you. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. I have a beautiful family, and I'm wondering why the fuck I'm so sometimes ashamed of it, or I don't know, have like some sort of weird relationship to it. Like it's just plain beautiful with all the cracks in it. Like I don't sugarcoat it. Like I see shortcomings on all aspects and people in it, but like that's human. I can differentiate, and so yeah, just thank you thank you to my parents. Thank you to both of them, and to my sister, to my twin sister. Speak the names to Julia, to Stephanie, my mom, and to Rüdiger, my father. So I'm grateful for them. I want to ask you, what do you want to have been?
What do I want to have been? What will my legacy be? Something I don't think about too much, although it's present in everything I do, because of course people won't remember or judge how much money you had in the bank, how successful you were at business. They'll always remember how you made them feel and how much you listened. So I believe and held space and asked deep questions. That's why I want to be remembered. Someone that really played their part in getting to the root of things that hold us back, all of us, from reaching the potential that we all have. And I know that sounds grandiose, and I used to fear speaking that out loud. I used to fear that kind of egotistical way of viewing this work, but it is that. Of course, I'm fully admit, like, I want to be seen in that way. You know, does that match how I feel inside? Does it feel congruent to how I am showing up? Yes, currently. And I want that to remain. I want that to increase. I want, connect people to themselves mainly, to like, to really to run my best leg, you know, be remembered for someone that really gave it all, showed up and experienced, but not just being service, just also was joyful, didn't take things too seriously. It's a great thing to contemplate your own death and what people are going to say about you. The Stoics did this tremendously well. Memento mori, remember you're going to die one day. To not take yourselves too seriously or think that you are better than anyone else, because in a moment it can be taken from you. But also to contemplate death and to know what contributes to the greater good or the meaningful existence, what people are going to say when you are gone, how people are going to remember you. And for me, it's playful, really playful. Probably my biggest values, which are like community, connection, play. So someone that brought people together also. And I always say the best thing you can do for someone is introduce them to someone else, to really know that there was like a dot connector or a bridge builder in that capacity to someone that, listened deeply and helped us remember. That's a big one. Yeah, bro.
Thanks for this conversation. Truly appreciate
Yeah, it's been nourishing. It's there's so much that comes up when we speak, and testing as well. There's triggers, there's external problems that always come up, but it's a nice recipe for a rich conversation that I always get a lot from. So thank you, brother.
Hey, beautiful listener, you have made it all the way through. And I want to take a moment to say thank you. And you can do me an enormous favor. It's all I'm going to ever ask from you. And that is to go to your podcast app right now. And if you enjoyed the episode, give the podcast a 5-star rating. If you want to write 1-2 words or sentences, even more powerful, even better, thank you already in advance. And also, while you're at it, just click on that follow button, on that bell notification, so that you never miss a new episode. All of that just contributes, and it helps me to increase the reach of the podcast. That means I can attract bigger guests, and that means I can deliver more powerful episodes. So it's a tiny thing. I'm only gonna ask this little favor of you ever, not more. 10-15 seconds of your time, a couple of clicks, that's it. Makes a huge difference for me as a creator. So thank you so much.